Welcome to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Cheta.
Back from Nigeria. I'm sure, Cheta, now you're going to be on a strict diet and strict exercise regime because we all know what happens in Nigeria.
Yes, I had an undue amount of plantain. Not that I'm complaining.
Man, look, when I went on my trip, got back, it was even now I said to myself, dude, do something.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not going to step on the scale.
wise man. Let's just get things rolling because I know you have an appointment to rush to. I have a meeting to try and get into, but record we must. Um, Cheta, why you were aware? I remember sending you a few articles, a few posts on Twitter. Still refuse to call it X, and it was a meltdown of reform supporters because as reform was glibly rolling out its May election candidates, one thing suddenly became very apparent. There were a lot of black and brown people who
A
had
lot.
made the list.
There were a
You
lot.
know?
A few. There were a few. I wouldn't say that there were a lot. There were a
Well,
few of
no,
them.
well, well, again, the thing is, a lot is also very comparative, isn't it? When you look at the party like Reform, and that's what we want to get to. When you go to a party like Reform, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 is too much. But when you have over 10 or even 20, and then again, as I said, there was a meltdown on Twitter because their supporters just kept going, these people
This
that you
is
should
not what we
report.
paid for.
So um, and I remember, Cheta, in our very first episode of this podcast, you called it. You said, although you were speaking to people from our neck of the woods, and you said that they would vote reform. However, what they've done now is go further than voting reform. They are now standing as candidates, and two of those candidates in Southampton stand out exceptionally. There's a Toriola Coker who's standing in the Banistan Polygon election. And then there's Tricius Chisika, and both are of African. So Toriola, as you can tell from
It's
the name,
clearly Nigerian
is
Yoruba.
Nigerian. Yeah, and Toriola is Zimbabwean. In fact, in the West Midlands, we also have some lady. I don't remember her name. From what I gather, she went to IMSU. She's so in your
And for those who don't know, IMSU is Imo State
Most
University.
University. She's an Igbo lady, but yeah, and she's moved. I think she moved from the Conservatives to Reform. So it's just my way of saying, look, this spreads across everywhere, But what do you make of people from our neck of the woods, from African heritage communities, um, standing for a party that clearly, and we'll come down to some of those their policies, clearly says they don't want us here?
So it's rather unfortunate, but it's on brand for um I would say for Nigerians, and this is keeping in mind that there is a Zimbabwean on one of those tickets. You see our politics back in Nigeria, and I've had 2.5 weeks dose of it. There's no regard to ideology. It's just we have a mentality of any means to power, I will take it. So if many of our people see an opportunity to get into power, they will take it. And one problem that we are going to have is this Toriola fellow, whom some people found his Twitter handle, and they've come to the conclusion that he's a grifter. Um, which is basically on brand for reform, because at the end of the day, Nigel Farage is a grifter. Um, what is going to happen, very unfortunately, is if he gets into parliament or he gets into a councillorship,
So yeah,
our
he's standing for council. Yeah.
yeah, our people will begin to fet him. There will be no regard for the platform that he came to power on, regardless of how harmful that platform is to us in general. you will find a group of our people who will begin to hail him as a conquering son. It's that short-termism. It's that short-termism is a national affliction. And it's the national affliction that's got our country into where the position it is, which made so many people ultimately run away from the country. And it is that same short-term thinking that, as an example, the current president of the country, President Tinubu, is doing with his sponsored division of the opposition parties, which ultimately is forcing those opposition parties to coalesce into to try to form a united front against him. We are short-termists. We don't seem to, and perhaps it's the environment. I don't know. There's a lot of research that needs to be done into why we're short-term thinkers. But for someone to come and stand with a party that is explicitly now, it would be more forgivable if Toriola had been born in the UK and brought up, and maybe his own parents had also been born in the UK, so he could claim to be to be part of the furniture. Um, you could go into a long story of Ngozi Fulani, for example, who, despite being third generation here, was still being asked where she's from. But that would be a segue. The point is, Turiola
Or your
came.
favorite Kemi Badenoch.
She was born here.
Mm.
Turiola came on a global talent visa. I don't even know what category it is, whether it was a promise, a true promise, or exceptional talent. That's besides the point. The point is, this boy, in a proper Omo Niger, born and brought up in Nigeria, came to the UK on a global talent visa. And then, so he's the classical definition of an immigrant. I won't even call him an expat, like I usually try to make the distinction. He's a classic
Chris, are
definition
you
of an immigrant.
how
I
upset
am
do you have to
actually,
be to go from
I am actually upset.
expats to immigrants?
When I'm actually very upset about the whole thing.
Mm,
Because it's a very, very solid example of the kind of things that I really against. Where you have us doing things that harm the collective,
mm,
that harm all of us, because that one person wants to stand. So it's the encapsulation of the "I better pass my neighbor" mentality.
mm.
End of
So,
story.
so do you think? And sometimes I get this in some conversations with people. Do you think that perhaps he has said to himself that if I'm part of the political establishment, perhaps I will get some sort of like special treatment, either from
That's
the
what
Home
it is.
Office, because because it's quite interesting. Um, just a few some weeks ago, Reform proposed a policy that would stop uh, Commonwealth citizens, except for the Irish, which is I will get to that, but Commonwealth citizens from voting and for standing for election. So that means if if this man if Toriola goes and the Tricious, the lady from Zimbabwe, let's say they are at a reform conference where this has to be adopted, where this has to be put to a vote, they will stand up gladly to say, well, what we want is for people who have my background to not be able to vote, to not be able to stand for election. Now, they may say to themselves, and this comes back to your I better pass my name, but they may say to themselves at that point, look, we're British citizens because we don't have any need for either. So when it comes to this, we can always just switch our passports and forget our history. But it's quite damaging. Now, but the other thing as well, and this is also what interests me about the lady from Zim, because she's now, as you can imagine, when a lot of these candidates were announced, Toriola, Tricious, and a lot of other people, I think Bangladeshi, Indian, and the rest, people went a digging. Suddenly, the scrutiny
Of course,
that
people will go
reform,
and dig in.
suddenly the scrutiny that reform doesn't do for its candidates, its base started doing on these candidates. So Tricious is a care worker. She owns a care company, but it's quite interesting that under a reform government, she would not. she would have to wait, if it happens, for at least 15 years before she gets a settled status. Otherwise, Zia Yusuf has just mentioned that they would scrap ILR indefinitely. So she would just have to keep renewing her visa every 5 years. And it makes you wonder, do these people see that? But on the flip side, what's in it for reform? Having stood or having run for years as an anti-immigration on an anti-immigration platform, what's in it for them to field these candidates who are clearly uh, from migrant communities?
It's simple. It's a branding thing. It's a branding opportunity for Nigel Farage. He does not want to be seen. So it's damaging for him internationally. You remember that a few months ago it came out, a lot of his classmates in secondary school came
Mm,
out, and the sheer number of them basically saying that he's a racist.
mm,
It's something that he could not ignore. That could not be that is something that basically they could not, they can't run from it, they can't hide from it. You understand that kind of stuff.
mm,
So basically, um him saying, him getting um uh um uh, uh, black and ethnic minority candidates on boards the reform um bandwagon is basically him trying to tell people that, oh, I am not I am not a racist. You understand?
mm,
And that is the bottom line of what he's trying to achieve. He's trying to point out to show people that he's not racist. He's very inclusive. All of that good stuff. Which, if we want to be honest, we all know is not very true.
yes.
But it's all about branding. So it's
Mm,
one of those things. It's a very good example of where I always say interests.
mm,
Interest ultimately becomes the driving factor of in all of these things. He does not want to be seen. He does not want to be um shown as what he is,
mm.
and he's he's lucky enough to find enough silly people who are enough silly people from our community who will basically give him a true pass.
But it doesn't seem to be working per se. I mean, it might work with a few donors, it might work with a few media talking heads, of which there is a lot of them who are drawn and attracted to reform. But when you go, I mean, so for a while, Toriola had to lock the comments on his Twitter page because the responses to his announcement were just horrid. It was, it was flat out racism. Apart from forget the people who were talking about remigration, deporting him, there were people calling him a monkey and all. So the base, the people who are supposed to go vote for them, have thoroughly rejected these candidates, and in fact, what they're now calling on is for people to go vote uh, Rupert Lowe's what was restore, yeah,
Restore.
which
Yeah, but
is
that's that.
which is violently even more racist than Nigel can manage, or maybe at least he wears his on the sleeve while Nigel tries to hide behind a fog of cigarette smoke. Um, But it's quite interesting, and but you also mentioned something, the community being silly and short termish, because I don't know if you remember, in what I think it was either last year, Nadim Zahawi, who is now a Reform member, had tweeted or written publicly against Nigel Farage, and he said, "Let me just read this: I'm not British born. I'm as British as you are. Your comments are offensive and racist, and I will be frightened to live in a country run by you. Fast forward to a few months later. There he is hailing Nigel Farage as the next best thing. And it just, again, makes you, um, it makes you think, really, especially now that you have like almost a five-party system, because we've seen the end of the two-party system. And it just, and
Which
I
I've been
know,
calling for a bit.
yes, which you have been, but it's, I don't know, because we've seen the response um, from reform supporters. We've seen a half-hearted response from reform leadership. But do you really think that as a community, as an African heritage community, there will be a push to get these guys elected on a reform platform? Or do you
No,
think we are?
no, there will not be. There will not be. Um, uh, I think that these guys will lose. For me, the real question is not whether they would lose. The the real issue is whether our community will punish them for what essentially is a betrayal of the group.
Mm,
Because this is essentially how societies keep the conformity that is required for the group to prosper.
mm,
When people go out of the acceptable bounds, the Overton window,
mm,
if you will, then the society imposes sanctions on those people.
mm,
So think about it this way. Um, when I was headed in for to the place, I'm doing a consultancy somewhere.
mm,
When I was headed in, I passed two ambulances. One of them was moving along normally, and the
mm,
other one was way behind, but turned on her siren because it was a female driver. Turned on her siren, and then traffic cleared for her, and she moved on to the destination. Now, I couldn't help but contrast this with what would have happened in Nigeria. First things first, both ambulances would have turned on their sirens
mhm, mhm,
regardless because they saw traffic. They wanted to
mm.
beat the traffic. Second, the general community around the people in traffic would not
Yeah.
have given them space to pass because everybody would have known that or would have suspected that they are simply turning on the sirens in order to beat traffic.
Mm,
Third, for them to move at space, they would need to have mobile policemen to help clear the roads for them. Ergo, the politicians who move around with mobile policemen. So
mm,
it has become a vicious cycle, a self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating cycle. Now, the problem or the issue is norms that have been broken. In this part of the world, everybody understands and everybody accepts that emergency services need need to move faster than
mm,
every other person. So those emergency services, they have their norms. They will not abuse the use of their sirens. They
mm,
have, I mean, during the first time period that I lived in the UK, I remember two cases at least of policemen who abused the use of their sirens and who were punished for
mm,
doing that. And I also remember that during that first time when I was living in the UK, Tony Blair, who was Prime Minister at the time, there
mm.
was a point, this was during the height of the war on terror, the so-called war on terror. And he
Yeah.
was coming back to London from Washington, where he had gone for yet another conference with his overlord, George Bush.
Mm,
And he was in traffic. That's the Prime Minister's car was in traffic, and the his driver, an SAS person, suddenly came to the conclusion that the Prime Minister is a sitting duck in this traffic. It was around
mm,
Oslo that this
mm,
happened. So he didn't use siren. He
mm,
simply took the Prime Minister's car and got into the bus lane
mm.
and went off, went off along the bus lane. And it was a scandal for days. I remember Nick Ferrari shouting repeatedly on top of the matter, like, who does he think he is? Eventually, the Prime Minister's office had to apologize, and I think they paid a fine for
Mm,
using the bus lane that they were not entitled to use. Would such a thing ever happen in our neck of the woods? Never. Now, it's a simple thing. This is a societal norm, and
mm,
anybody who breaks the societal norm is punished very ruthlessly,
mm,
so that the message is clear that you don't break societal norms.
mm,
It's very much the same. So, going back to what we're talking about, you, Toriola, and you, Chikasa, you people are doing something, are partaking in something so obviously harmful to us as a people. It now falls on us as a people to look beyond whatever sentiment and to impose a cost on both of you so that you will not do it again. I
mm.
mean, Zia Yusuf, as an example, is an
Yeah,
outcast in the Pakistani community.
yeah.
What
Oh,
the day Farage and Co. and that day will come, the day they drop him like a hot potato, he
mm,
has nowhere to go because the Pakistani community will ostracize him.
mm. And talk about the Pakistani community in what seems to be like a sweet irony of fate. Now, I'm yet to see because I had to check and triple check if this was a a hoax. It doesn't seem it is. There's a reform candidate called Mohammed Sharia. And
I don't believe you.
look, that's why I'm saying I had to check and triple check. Like this cannot be. It cannot be that there's a reform candidate called Mohammed Sharia, and just because of reform's virulent anti-Islam stance and their constant peddling of the fake news that reform or that the UK is under Sharia law is just it's the sweetest of things. But you also see it's not just these are candidates. They're the lady who wants to stand as mayor of London. Um, Lord, I don't even remember her name now. Is Egyptian by heritage. Um, of course, their chairman Zia Yusuf is Pakistani. So there's you see that there's a thing where they bring these people, use them as poster boys,
As props.
as props. Aha, use them as props. But then, if you look at a report by Hope Not Hate, their their state of hate 2026 report, you will see that when you speak to the members, you would see that there's a distinction or there's a distinct feeling they have about this community. And I know we just keep saying this and we've been going over and over. But the thing is, you've nailed it on the head, Cheta. There needs to be, the community needs to decide where do we draw the line? Because I understand and I also understand that I've been a beneficiary of this, of the personal votes, of people saying, well, we may not know so much about this party or we may not even necessarily like this party, but because we know you, we trust that you're going to speak for us, we know you're what we know you're not going to let us down, we're going to vote for you. And and I've had people say that to me. So I just worry, and that again might just be the false hope that that reform may get. I wonder, rather not worry. I wonder if people are going to say to Tricious, to Torella, you know what? We know you. We know that you're going to be um, a foot in the door, at least to bring some of the issues that affect our community into the attention of the council. So we're going to vote for you, not the platform. And that's where I sort of like differ from you, Ibicheta, where when you say that uh, the community will not vote for them, because if there's a large community, and it's quite telling that both Tricious and Toriola are in the same um, city, are running in the same city. So that means there's a large percentage, because again, all is political calculation, isn't it? So I differ, because I think that they will get some votes. Now, whether they'll get enough to win, I don't know. Whether the
And
reform bill.
what I said is that they will not win.
So that's something to look out for. Come May, we are going to look at whether Toriola and Tricious have won. Because if the reform voters, if the white ethnic reform voters get off their dislike for black and brown people, they might, and then just look at just a platform. And this happens a lot, Cheta, where people just go and they look for the logo and they just put their X across that. They might just win it. But it will be interesting to see how they then spin that if they do. So I think we have almost like a wager going on. I think they might. Cheta says they won't. And I think we'll also put a poll with this episode to ask people if they would vote for this candidate standing on reform. What do you think?
I don't think there's a point putting the poll. Let me tell you why.
Why?
Our audience in this in the, I mean, based on the analytics, our
Mm,
growing audience is largely people from our community. So
mm.
that poll you are going to get no's. Now,
What?
if we
That's what
had
I'm saying.
if we
We want to find out whether we will definitely get a no. I want to be because I think you'll be shocked.
so and no, and I will tell you that our people will not vote for them.
Mm. I'm
It's
hoping not,
so
but I'm just not. I'm not
I can
as
I can I can I can almost assure you, that's someone I'm confident about.
mm,
They are trying to appeal to a certain. So my profiling of both of them is that they live
mm,
in areas where white people are dominant, white native
mm,
people are dominant, and they believe that by standing for reform, they will get it.
mm,
Like I said, Nigel Farage's calculation is he needs a token black, a token brown person to point to and say, but I'm not racist. So
mm,
that's why he's letting them through. Um, I think that the supporters of Nigel Farage are not ashamed to display who they really are, and they
mm,
will not vote for those people.
mm. Anyway, um, we can only hope, can't we?
Well, we watch
But
and see.
yeah, we'll watch and see. But Cheta, I'm very, very cognizant of the fact that you do. We spoke about the meeting that you're rushing into, which is why you've gone into a different location now because you need to get that going. And same here. But look, welcome back. As
Thank
we
you.
say, I hope you brought something because I'll come and collect market thing from you when we
Mhm.
see. But
I
I
bought
have
I,
an
I brought soya.
man, I brought when I came back, I brought kilishi. Oh dear Lord.
Uh,
Someone
if you
sent me
don't
kilishi from Abuja. And
Mm.
Cheta,
If
I have
if you don't come quickly, so in short, let me put it like this. So a couple of weeks ago,
mm.
mm, a friend of ours came from Nigeria and brought proper roasted granuts, mm, and and gave it
I, re-
and gave it to me.
mm,
And
I
by the
remember
next
that
morning,
story.
the entire bottle was gone. And madam almost did not talk to me for 2 days. I said, "What kind
see,
of greed is
see,
this? Lack of self-control."
Cheta, that is an impeachable offense. To finish proper Nigerian, when I used to work in Lagos, there was this lady on
See, as you know,
maybe. Oh my God, the
See,
groundnuts were.
as you know, because of the fact of the visa renewal thing,
Mm,
this this stretch that I just came out from was my
mm,
longest stretch in the UK since my family moved.
mm,
So for those who may not know, the deal between me and the wife when they were moving was that I'll be spending more time in Nigeria because my work is very specific.
mm.
But as wives tend to do, the deal was agreed but was rendered null and void.
Bam.
So anyway, this was my longest stretch. The period from December to the end of March was my
Mm,
longest stretch in the UK.
mm.
And I was craving things like granuts. So when that thing came, every other thing just all the croissants, everything just shift to one side.
Cheta, you have no idea. When I went back,
So
even just banana, just akara, but that one they sell by the root. My good Lord. No, look, I punish myself with food. So now, now
there's a
I'm
story.
doing.
There's a story on Business Times. I think I'll send you the link
Mm.
about how Akara is disappearing. I think I should send you the link so that you can
Oh,
put it in
wow.
the show notes. It's actually
That's
Very
sad.
interesting. But it speaks to this. Okay, let me rephrase how roadside akara is disappearing
Mm, mm,
because it speaks to something that is again the kind of thing that chased away a lot of us from
mm,
Nigeria.
mm.
So I'll send it. I'll find it and send to you so that send to you and send to Madam Producer, so that can put in the show notes. It's actually very interesting.
All right. No. On that note, Sheta, uh, we have
On a
to
note of
take you with.
Akara,
On a note of Accra, we have a few things. Keep my suya, and I'll see you at the next one.
I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.